Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Crown Unfiltered, the internet's premier car design podcast. This week we have the legendary Marek DJORDJEVIC on their podcast. Now, I say legendary because he is legendary, but you'd also be forgiven for not observing him on your radar. And I profess to have let him slip through mine as well, and I was educated on his brilliance and his background by Anders Warming. And Anders was telling me about and he actually mentioned it on this podcast, that he started out at Designworks USA and found himself surrounded by all these great designers like Eric Goplin and Marek Reichman, and one of the names that he mentioned was Marek DJORDJEVIC. And Marek is most well known for designing the Rolls-Royce Phantom 7. He spent 15 years with the BMW Group and was eventually the head of exterior design for Rolls-Royce. And I believe 2005 he left and he set up his own company called Marek DJORDJEVIC Design, and he's been in California ever since. And he works on a range of things from cars to boats, and I believe aviation stuff as well. Very, very smart guy, a brilliant designer, and this is a masterclass in presentation, design, the importance of design presentation. He told me, well, he shared a lot on very exclusive private presentations that they used to give high-end clients when he was at Rolls-Royce, and you know the importance of it, and the theater, and it was brilliant. So I hope you enjoy it. Much respect, dude. It's super nice to connect with you. I as I said to you, I mean, I've known obviously of your work for a long time. I'd seen your sketches online. I particularly the Phantom, the 7, and then when I met Anders, he was going on about you and the rest of the crew at Designworks. So it's an absolute honor to finally be able to connect a face to a name.
It's a pleasure, Sam. And an
honor. Marek, I understand that you are originally from Belgrade and that you studied an art center and then you joined Designworks. Can you tell me a little bit about growing up in Belgrade and how you connected the dots to eventually become a car designer?
Sure. Definitely one of those cases of, loved cars since I can remember, just dreamt about cars, loved cars, drew cars, classic case of all the school books full of little sketches and all of that sort of thing. Spending endless hours in our car in a garage, pretending I'm driving or racing or whatever it is. Just loved it really from when I can remember. I was happy to have some talent in drawing, so I just kept drawing as good as I could. I was frequenting at that time what was called cultural centers of these different countries. So German Cultural Center, British Cultural Center, French, and so on, and Italian. They had car magazines in them that normally I wouldn't have had access to. And obviously those car magazines were very full, rich of reference that I could draw from. I remember particularly seeing some drawings that I had a hard time realizing, is that real or is that a drawing? And, that was, of course, very, very inspiring. And little by little, I started putting together what you could call it. It wasn't really quite a portfolio, but I've kept my kind of stack of drawings and sketches and designs. and had the audacity one year to take them to the Belgrade Auto Show. And together with my father, found a blank wall in one of the halls and just put stuff up.
Wow.
And it was quite funny. Yeah, I was a kid, I was a teenager, that just kind of wanted to show these drawings and maybe get some input from people. I didn't know who to talk to about this stuff.
But
So what happened was next to me was actually it was in one of the smaller halls. It wasn't in any, I wasn't next to like Citroën or something like that. But next to me was a stand by one of the computer companies. I can't exactly remember which one. And they smiled. They walked over and said, "Look, I don't know if you realize that, but that's actually our space." But we like your initiative, we like your drawings and all that stuff, so we'll let you do it. But would you mind having a go at our software and see if you can draw some cars on it? And it was extremely primitive. I mean, it was basic geometric shapes kind of thing. But I did, and they would print them out and put them up and all that stuff. But that was kind of a funny anecdote from my early days. But it was really coming across an article in Automotor und Sport, which commissioned 4 different design schools with design projects, using different German brands. So I believe that was Pforzheim, who got to do Audi. RCA got Volkswagen. CCS got BMW. And Art Center got Porsche. And it just happened to be like the most stellar class Art Center's had, Craig Durfee was in it, the designer of the first Viper. Ken Okuyama was
Wow.
in it, massive fame, right? Then Grant Larson, who's been at Porsche ever since, and Dan Sturgis, and a couple of other guys. I mean, it was just amazing, So it was pretty clear where to go, if you really wanted to get the best stuff. But of course, for me, what hope was there for a kid from Belgrade? It was Yugoslavia at that
so
time.
what was the environment like in Yugoslavia at that time? Like,
well, it was, that was
it quite hostile?
well,
or?
it was no, I mean, it was free enough that we were politically kind of in between, the Soviet bloc, the Warsaw Pact, and the West, right? So it was a socialist country, but with a degree of freedom to travel out. And so thankfully, everything I owe to my parents, really. And part of it had to do with, taking us out of the country on trips, over the summer, traveling, many different places in Europe, and to Poland, actually, because my mom is from Poland. So
Oh wow, my wife is Polish.
Yeah. Oh right.
Yeah, she's from Warsaw. Where's your mom from? Do you know?
Warsaw.
Yep. Wow. Have you spent much time there?
Yeah. I have actually. We used to go pretty much every other summer to Poland, to Warsaw.
Oh wow.
To spend time with my mom's family. Yeah, and I do that now because since my parents retired, they spend most of their time in Warsaw, and then just maybe summers in Belgrade.
Oh mad! Wow.
Yeah.
We're there all the time. Yeah. I mean, in normal circumstances, but I mean, we're in Potsdam. It's 6 hours drive from here, and my wife's family's all still there, so we go back regularly. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, I interrupted. So carry on.
No. That's good. That's interesting. But yeah, so on those trips, obviously, I would stock up on some good magazines and some good inspiration, and seeing the cars, getting excited about the cars. It definitely kind of I think some of that probably drove my imagination, not having that ready at fingertips or before the eyes, right, at all times. Seeing nice cars, it was an event, and that impressions would, last and last in my imagination. So I'd end up drawing things. But so I think it was in the American Cultural Center that I was able to get in touch with, get an address for Art Center and so on. And I asked them for a catalog. So they sent that out, and it looked to me like that was the place to go. But again, if it wasn't for my parents, nothing would happen. So they took some convincing, actually, that's a career. That could be a career, because as most people, even today, if you ask them about what's car design, they think it's engineering, and that you need to go to an engineering school to become a car designer. But obviously, there is something, very different that's at play there. But I also managed to convince them that, I wouldn't be coming to the States to like race cars, because obviously I was a bit of a car guy, and I was actually driving since I was 13 because my mom couldn't drive. And long story, but we had two different places where we lived, and she ran a pharmacy back home. So we had these two cars, and only my dad drove, and sometimes one car was in one place and the other in the other, and some driving needed to be done. My mom didn't drive, so I drove since I was 13, illegally, but
Yeah.
It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I learned to drive. I learned to drive also. I was 10 or 11 years old back in South Africa. It started out just in a field, and then I don't know. My parents seemed to let me do a lot of things that they shouldn't have, and I was then, from the age of 13 or 14, the rule was I was not allowed to leave our neighborhood. That was the rule. And so yes, I was also driving pretty illegally from a young age. Yeah.
So I didn't know you grew up in South Africa.
Yeah, I'm South African, definitely. Yes, I'm.
Right.
Yes, yeah. Have you
So
been?
what brought you up north? I have not. I hear great things to visit, but
yeah, it's awesome. I don't know, car design. I finished school, went over to London on a gap year, and then decided I wanted to study car design, and stayed in the UK, and and then never left Europe. Basically, I jumped around a little bit, and now we are in Germany.
Right.
Yes.
And your family's still in South Africa?
Everyone's still in South Africa. I'm the only person in East Germany. Yeah.
Right.
And now, I mean, dude, it's pretty mad now at the moment. I can't believe the situation over here. And we kind of like, do we stay? Do we go? I don't know. I mean, we're not obviously, nothing's, touch wood, nothing's going to happen here, but it's also not out of the realms of possibilities. You just don't know. But I mean, we've got two young kids. My daughter's in school. She's 6, and my son's in kindergarten. That's not really much of an issue. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty mad. I mean, yeah. So, but I don't know. It's just this week has just been a total shock to everybody. I mean, my wife said to me on the weekend, she's like, you understand that, like, Russia's probably going to invade Ukraine. I was like, yeah. And then of course it was announced on the news a couple of days ago, and here we are. So yeah, I don't know. It's pretty mad, but we'll see. If
it is, I really hope it doesn't escalate.
Dude, it's and obviously we're more scared for a family that's back in Warsaw, but like ironically,
right.
There's a bunch of people flocking to Warsaw, but I don't know, dude. It's scary, man. It's really, really scary. We're just gonna have to wait and see, basically. And so your folks, are they in Warsaw now, or?
They are in Warsaw now. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm planning to bring them out here. I hope this all, works out through. I'm hoping to bring them out here for maybe 6 weeks or so in April.
Oh,
So
cool.
maybe third week of April or so. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a long ways for them. My parents are quite aged, so my mom doesn't travel too well that far. But there's now a direct flight from Warsaw to LA, so
And how
hopefully,
long is that? Is that like 12 hours or?
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's still. I guess it's still pretty long. But if they're out there for like 6 weeks, I guess it's okay.
Right.
And you come back to Europe quite frequently, Marek, or?
Well, I try actually. I was so thankful that in 2019 I had three chances to go visit them, and I took all three
Wow.
because next year was COVID, right? So
Yeah.
I visited him twice in Warsaw and once in Belgrade,
Okay.
and I'm so thankful for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I haven't seen them since.
Oh
So
shit! Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, dude, I had not been. I didn't go. I hadn't back to South Africa for like almost 3 years, and
see,
because of the pandemic as well. And then I went over in November last year because a bunch of friends had gone over with no issues. And then the minute I got on the flight, this stupid Omicron variant presented itself, and yeah, I don't know. Then I was stuck with that for 2 weeks, but it was fine. It was just, everybody else was freaking out. And my
right.
wife and kids were still over here, so they were a bit nervous about me coming back. But there was no issues in the end, and it was all good. But
Mm.
I don't know. If things get bad, if things get heated over here, I think we'll go to South Africa. Hopefully it'll
Mm.
be okay. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
How long is that flight?
It's also 12 hours, but it's like the good thing
Yeah,
is it's basically like straight down. So there's no jet lag really,
you don't even.
So if you get a night flight, it's okay, as long as you don't have small kids with you. But I mean, you can literally, have a few glasses of wine, have a snooze hopefully, and wake up fresh as a daisy, and you can hit the beach. So
Nice.
yeah, no, it's not too bad. I mean, it's just I mean, when I was younger, when I was a student, flying from the UK, you're trying to get the cheapest flights possible all the time. And I'd flown like there was one time I flew via Yemen and I had to stay over there, and it was pretty mad. But I'd done, yeah, crazy flights like that all the time, and it was just like not an issue. So, now if I have a direct flight and it's 12 hours, it's a luxury, So
Right.
yeah, all good. As long as there's no young kids, but yeah, they usually come with us. So there you go.
It's good that they do. It's good that they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 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 definitely. I mean, I wish it was more frequent. It would normally be. We would normally go at least every year, at least. But as you highlighted, this stupid pandemic has just got in the way of everything.
Yeah. I really miss travel. I really miss
Dude,
travel.
it's yeah, and it's even like now when things open up, you still like kind of, I don't know. There's something that's happened to us, in
Right.
this last two
Right.
years. Yeah, it's super weird, super weird.
Mm.
Listen, sorry. So I keep on getting distracted, but it's not a
Oh,
problem.
it's good. It's good.
Um, I can you talk to me a little bit about those the early days of Designworks, at least the time that you were there, because there was a bit of an all-star cast there, as I understand it. And this was like, I don't know. Apparently, they used to call him the kid because he was like the youngest at the time. But he mentioned you, Eric Goplin, Chuck Pelle, who I believe was he the founder of Designworks?
Yes, he was one of the founders. Yes, together with Ray Carter and James Grove. Yeah.
Wow. And then and Marek Reichman as well, who was there, which I had no idea about as well. And
Right. Right.
it sounded like a pretty pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it was one of those things, with any kind of teams, right? Especially creative teams, right? Every once in a while, you can come across a group that kind of has the chemistry that, brings the studio to life. And that was one of those occasions, and then something will change, maybe one person will go or another person will arrive, and, everything gets out of sync. But those times don't usually last, forever. But it was definitely one of those times where, and we were young. I think that was a good part of it too, So lots of energy and some personalities, of course. Yeah, we had. I think somebody probably mentioned. We even had like what we call the office Olympics or the studio Olympics.
Yeah,
we had
so
like all these different
yeah.
disciplines. We made our own sports in the studio, and there was always a ruckus and a noise coming out of that, because the studio had kind of these double doors at both ends. So that, of course, made for some great goals, right, for different games as well. So the other departments, that would maybe be eavesdropping from on the other side of the doors would wonder what in the world is going on in there. But that was our break time, But we were also all hyper productive, So it wasn't like we were slacking the whole time. It was just a lot of work, a lot of hard work, late hours, and all of that. But also some really fun camaraderie and silliness going on too,
So who was in charge of the studio at that time?
Good question. I don't remember what the peak of that time exactly was, but we had the studio was originally under management by Jeff Hans, who was there at Designworks from before my time. And then Henrik came in. I believe Henrik was the next one.
Yes, sorry, I completely forgot about him. Yeah, who else am I missing out before we forget? Was this
Chris Chapman?
Chris Chapman,
Richard Kong. Yeah, Richard Kong. And then I think a bit later was Darren Caddis, who was on the motorcycle side of things, actually. And we would have also designers coming from Munich, and from Rover, that was Reichman, that would come on exchange and things like that. So that was always fun. And then we would go, spend time on the other side too. I was actually the first one to go from BMW over to Rover Group back in, when was that? Winter of 93, 94. That was a fun... Those are some fun memories, actually, because I remember I was just talking to Ian Cameron the other day about that, my old boss from Rolls-Royce. I remember arriving wintertime in England, of course, it gets dark quick. And it was Sunday evening and dark. So I got to the hotel, got up in the morning, made my way to the studio. Somebody picked me up, dark. Go to the studio. This is the old Canley studio before Gaydon was built.
Wow.
And it was in the old Triumph transmission factory.
Yeah.
No windows. No
what?
windows. So, yeah. So get out of work, dark. So I've spent my first week until Saturday, until the first day off. I did not see any daylight, not sunlight, no daylight. It was the longest jet lag, weird Twilight Zone time ever. But it was a great time. I mean, it was, you can imagine, British humor in full effect. It was hard to get any work done because every 15 minutes somebody was at my desk cracking jokes about somebody else or in the studio and whatnot. I mean, modelers to the 10th degree of hard time they'd be giving to the designers and things. And it was just brilliant.
Was Jeff Upix there by any chance at that time?
Yeah, he was. So was the studio was at that time still run by Gordon Skid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a crazy it's mental.
But I remember the first review. It was for I think we called it the Heartland Project or something like that, which was for their Discovery replacement. It ended up being probably one of the longest running car projects in the history of automotive design. But it was on, I don't know which iteration of that project, but the review was including 5 scale clay models, and they were arranged in a circle, and everybody turned up. All the designers were there, the management was there, and we met for about 2 hours, I think. I just listened in, I just joined in on the project, and at some point it was obviously it was raining outside England, and roof starts leaking. So there are these drops of water coming down right into our circle, and nobody bat an eyelash. They just carried on talking. One of the modelers cinematically kicked over a bucket to under the water, and we just carried on. But it was interesting. I was one thing that I was really impressed by at that time was the quality of the work that was on the walls. And in my estimation, it was far better than what I saw at the Fitz.
Wow.
The talent, the sketches, the work was fantastic. But somehow there was a massive disconnect to what I saw in the showrooms. So it was just, it was bizarre. Like, where does all this talent go? But I kind of got a sense after that meeting, because after that 2.5 hours of everybody talking about all 5 of those designs, I had zero idea what any one of them thought about any one of those designs. But they all talked. So I think at that time, I kind of grasped a little bit of what British diplomacy is all about, right? It's like
Right.
there was a great deal of talking, but
no real
not
substance.
much
Yeah.
of actual direction and things like that. But work was brilliant, and people were just great, really, really great, really great.
What was the process like of following a car? And I guess you were only there temporarily, but like, what was the process of following a car through production like that? Because I mean, I think this is going back a little bit earlier than that, but there was a pretty well-known British designer called Harris Mann, who inspired a lot of like really well-known designers, British designers that probably are heading up for retirement now. And he came into the university when I was at Coventry, and he was just saying that he showed us some of the original sketches that he did for whatever it was, some old Triumph, and then he would basically hand over sketches to engineering and then hold his fingers, and then something would come back. I guess that was probably, the process was probably a bit more involved by the time you were there.
I would have hoped so, but I didn't stay there long enough to really follow it. I mean, obviously I was there, on subsequent stints also when Gaydon was built and so on. Although I have to say, with that move to Gaydon, a lot of that atmosphere was lost. Because all of a sudden Gaydon studio was like an airport, and just lost that intimacy, that human scale, that you can get in a smaller physical space.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I mean, things changed, of course. I'm sure to how things were done because of the BMW ownership and influence and so on. But there are some great products coming out from that for sure. Following that, like the Range Rovers and so on. But yeah, fun times.
And what were you sent over there for, Marek?
For that particular project, but it was also to, I think, kind of instigate this exchange of capacity of people, designers, between the 3 studios at that time, which was the Munich studio, the Fitz, the Designworks BMW in California, and Rover in first Canley and then Gaydon.
And was Chris Bangle involved much at that with the Designworks studio at that time, or not yet?
He was. I was actually hired just before he came on board. So
Okay.
I was hired at the time when Hans Brown was in charge. He was actually head of interior, but he became a chief designer overall due to the circumstances at the time. And I actually had, this is one of those things like, you know, timing, opportunity, luck, you know, play a big part in that, because my last project at Art Center was, well, there were two. There was the sponsor project. At that time, the last 2 semesters were sponsor projects. And my 8th semester, the last one, was sponsored by Toyota and the Calty studio. But my second project, which was the senior thesis, which you run in parallel at that time, it would be something that you would design in 7th semester and you would build the model in 8th semester to kind of lessen the load on that 8th term. But my original project in the 7th semester was something else. But then I got wind that BMW were looking to open a studio in California. So for my 8th semester, I quickly changed the project to BMW. It was a 7 series. And so as luck would have it, I was alerted to the fact that BMW would be coming for a visit at Art Center on a particular day at a particular time. So I just took all my BMW project work, went to the studio at Art Center, took down all my Toyota stuff, put up all my BMW stuff. And sure enough, when they walked in, like, oh, very nice studio. Yes, Toyota. Oh, BMW. So went over and had a chat, and that was it.
And who was in that group?
Invited. So that was a visit just with Chuck Pelly and Hans Brown.
Okay.
And a couple of days later, I got invited to an interview. And then actually I started working freelance because that was at the time when E2 was a project, little electric car. And so I was doing some sketches on a freelance basis during my 8th semester. And then, you know, following graduation, got an offer, accepted, and that was it.
When you started at Art Center, had you already like developed your drawing skills to a pretty competent level, or did you have to like kind of push hard during your time there to elevate yourself?
Very much so. I'll never forget, being a foreign student. I didn't have the luxury of visiting the campus, prior to starting. So I was actually, although I was a foreign exchange student for my last year of high school in Washington State. But there's some funny stories there. But I'll never forget that first day walking into Art Center and going into the student gallery, to see the work, and just getting terrified. Like, I can't do that. What am I doing here? There's no way I can do this. And it was very humbling, I mean, you come with any kind of drawing talent. I think it's for most people, because you can kind of see that you can draw better than maybe your colleagues in your high school class, right? But then you come to Art Center and you're like, oh my Lord, it's
another level.
Can do is incredible. Yeah. So, and that point alone, I think, brings me to what I think is probably the greatest thing about a place like Art Center, or Art Center specifically, is that it really shows you how much more you're capable of than you may originally think.
Right.
So that is key, because that's a lesson for life, that even though you might be facing something that seems, over the top challenging, it gives you that faith that if you, focus and buckle down and do it, you can get through it. You can do it.
That's an incredible lesson to learn. Absolutely. I just, the thing is, it's also learning to focus on the right things as well, because you can also work hard and work stupid, you know. But
Yes.
it seems to me there's two out of all the people that I speak to, and also people that I've worked with. It seems to me like there's two schools specifically that stand out with regard to having like really well-rounded students. And what I mean by that is somebody that is able to communicate beautifully through drawing and visualization, but also the thinking is there. And there are other schools, like, for example, I don't know, a postgrad place, let's say Royal College of Art. You're not always going to get somebody that's going to have everything coming out of a school like that. I mean, at least nowadays. But it seems like I know art centers specifically, like their Viscom classes have got to be probably some of the best in the world. Whereas like a place like Coventry, at least when I was there, they just didn't have that. You know, it was just kind of like you should go and figure it out by yourself, you know. And that's got to be such a great asset to have, you know, because somebody very pragmatically deconstructs this illustration process for you. And yes, you've obviously got to work at it, but it obviously saves a lot of time when somebody shows you how to do it properly, you know, and to a pretty exceptional level, right?
Yeah, I think, well, I've always thought that one of the biggest strengths of Art Center in particular, I'm not familiar to a great degree with other schools, but it was the fact that the classes are taught by working professionals.
Right.
Not academics,
yes.
but working professionals.
Yes.
And that's key. That's
that
really key because it really connects you to the reality of what's happening in the industry that very moment, you know, not something from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you know. So that's very, very important. And the other thing is, I mean, obviously I teach there, but I remember very well from my time as a student, and I'm sure this is still true, as much as, you know, I like to think that I try very hard in what I do as far as teaching is concerned. Students learn the most from each other.
Right.
And that is also very important. So drawing as high of a talent as possible to the place goes a very long way about, you know, the quality of the graduates, you know, and their abilities and so on. So there's that really good, healthy competition, you know.
Yeah.
Learning from each other and also competing with each other. You know?
I think,
and of course the internships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but that's what I'm talking about. Like that is absolutely true. I mean, there was also when I was at university, it was such a strong, not just camaraderie, but also like this sense of you know, pushing each other, elevating each other, and you know, everybody wants to try and outdo one another, and that's a very, very productive thing. In our case, like I felt that there was a real element that was missing, and that was like visual communication, for example. That, and also probably just an all-round disconnect from the industry, and it's because we didn't have people from industry teaching us. And you must be person number 20, I think I've spoken to, that is teaching at Art Center currently. It's I don't know how big is that place? I mean, it's like how many visiting lecturers can they have? It's mental.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously geographic location helps. You know, they're almost every car company that has, you know, vehicles in the market in California, U.S. has satellite studios in Southern California. So that helps. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's I get so envious when I think about it, you know, because it just seemed like such a well-rounded program. I'm not envious of the fees though. That place is crazy expensive, and it stands. It's still, I don't know. School's still out whether or not that's like, whether that's justified. I mean, I think There's no two ways about it. I think that program, from everything that I've seen and heard, is absolutely exceptional. Is it worth all that money? I don't know. I don't think that pans out. I mean, in 10 years, 15 years time. It's just my opinion with everything
No,
that's kind
you're
of.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think that's, to be fair, that's a problem with education in US in
In
general,
general,
at this
right?
high
Yes,
level.
yes, yes,
But
yes.
certainly Art Center is right up there. I mean,
Yeah,
it's absolutely, if you try to do a calculation about how much can a designer make getting out of school and so on, and for how long in order to pay that off.
yeah,
Well, I'll tell you, that influences a lot about who we can have as students.
right.
So yeah, I mean, you'll see the parking lot, very often nicer cars than what the faculty drive. But there is also, thankfully, I think that situation with the cost is escalated. But even when I was a student, I would not have been able to complete the studies have I not gotten the scholarship.
Right.
Period. So obviously that was an added incentive and motivation for me. So
Yes.
as a foreign student, I couldn't get the scholarship right away. So I had to, I only came with enough funds for first 2 semesters.
Yeah.
And after
Yeah.
that, it was either I get the scholarship or I go home.
Or game over. Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow.
And same thing with the job.
So you basically joined BMW and you stayed there until you left the car industry in 2005. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
About 15 years. Yes.
Marek,
Long
can you talk to me a little bit about the Phantom project? I know that was a big deal, and from the little bit of research that I've done, it seems that you were quite privy with regard to the importance of that car in reviving the Rolls-Royce brand. Can you unpack that a little bit and the background of that project before prior to getting on it?
Sure. It's actually the early stages of it are another nice little life lesson, and what I like to say is like, have faith because life will work out in, the best way possible eventually, right? Back in 1998, I was 2.5 years into a BMW project for production, which was based on the E46. And it was to do kind of BMW was trying to do a bit more of a platform design, which at that time Volkswagen was doing so well. They had so many cars on the same platforms with completely different design and so on. And BMW wasn't doing very much of that. So they wanted to do something that could be a different design, but based on the 3 Series. So it was a smaller car. It was something that would, later in spirit would become the 2 Series. But instead, it turned out to be the compact, if you remember it, right?
Oh yes, yes.
So yeah, so what they were doing is my car was a completely different design, and the counter proposal was a 3 Series with a cut-off trunk, which was the compact, right?
Okay.
So because of the success of the launch of the E46 3 Series, the media, the reception was so positive that they decided to stick with the same design and just, do the same thing again as the previous compact and just cut off the tail. By that time, I was 2.5 years into it. Everybody was telling me, "Oh, Dr. Reitzland, the board love your car. This is it. It's exciting." We were even doing versions that would be like my first M, car and so on. And it was a cool little thing. It had like some cues of the 2002, but not a lot, just a little bit. But anyway, so that got canceled in the spring of 1998. And I was devastated, obviously, because putting all that time and effort into it, and, I was in Germany a lot doing that. And then that couple of months later, BMW acquired rights to Rolls-Royce brand. And so I had time to, think about that, focus on that, and prepare a plan of how I thought the process should go in designing for a brand that we didn't really know that much about. So it had a bit of the old questions: who, where, what, when, and how should we go about doing this, right? And I had actually, this was the time when Anders was very kind to help with some of his illustrations, because I had little chapters for each one of these questions, right? And he would do a little doodle for my proposal plan that would kind of illustrate each one of those chapters. It was very, very nice of him. And so the plan got put before Dr. Reitzel at the time, and the discussion and how to go forward. And they said, yeah, let's do it. So the plan called for a competition with designers from the 3 studios at that time, from California, from Munich, and from Gaydon at the time, and to do it in London, to have a kind of a secret, a covert studio in which we would meet and then do kind of an immersion into the brand culture, understanding the customer, because the idea was to do it as an authentic, Rolls-Royce, especially because, everybody expected, we'll just do a 9 Series BMW and put a grill on it, but authenticity was, of course, paramount. So we, a few months later, set up a studio in the very heart of London on Bayswater Road, and right across the street from Hyde Park. And we had a secondary studio, which was for the clay models, at another location, Holborn Studios. It was like a place where they did kind of photo studios and filming and things like that.
Wow.
And we had
was that in Holborn?
It was, I think it was in Islington.
Okay.
I can't remember now the names. It was such a long time ago. But that we called that the bookshop, because these places had code names. The design studio was the bank, because it was formerly a Westminster bank that got converted into a flat. And apparently, who was it? Was it Rob Lowe that used to stay there some time ago? And then so some random person showed up. It's like, is Rob there? I'm like, no. But yeah, so that was the studio for design, and the clay was the other place. And we had 3 of us competing for exterior and 2 for interior. And each of us did 2 scale models, 1 to 2.5, so it's double the 5th scale. We had brilliant people working on the models. I work with Andy Fulford, who's had a career since then in both at Ford and Lincoln and Gulfstream, and I think now back at Lincoln again. Brilliant guy. He was also kind of the lead in organizing the modeling effort and so on. And then we had the presentation that had selected 3 out of those 6 for full size. I went back to California to do my full size model, and that was actually at a time when my parents came to visit, because that was following another pretty tragic time, at least in my family's life, because it was after the war back home.
Oh shit.
So they came, that was finally over, and they were able to travel, so they came to visit for 6 months. end of 1999. But yeah, it was, I have to admit that it was a very difficult time because there I was in London, in these incredible circumstances, designing, the world's finest motor car, as I like to call it. I had a flat on Piccadilly, right across the street from Fortnum and Mason. It was just amazing, amazing. But I would be on the phone with my mom, who's crying, hearing air raid sirens in the background, because she's reliving this from her childhood. She was in Warsaw with her home flattened during World War II, running with whatever they could carry and so on. So it was a tough time. I couldn't do anything about it. So I just basically, put everything I had into what I was doing to focus. And that was the only way I can contribute, is just do the best that I could.
Wow.
So that was rough. So it was great getting them out, following that and having them spend 6 months out here. And then after that, we had, I think it was Christmas of 1999, we had a selection for both interior and exterior. And my exterior won, and the interior of Charles Coldham won. Another brilliant man. You should interview him. He's wonderful.
It's the first time I've heard that name, so I'm very intrigued.
Oh, Charles. Yeah. He's a British gentleman who, I'll tell you, he's in his, I'm not sure of his age exactly now. I believe he's in his 60s. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. But he's more creative than lads I see in their 20s.
Wow.
He's brilliant. He's never stopped. His original start was at Land Rover.
Yeah.
For a number of years. Then he went to Kalani and worked for Kalani for a number of years. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah.
Extreme opposite, right? And then came back to Rover. And so he was the man from Gayton to compete for the interior. And brilliant, just a brilliant designer, great man.
Where is he now? Is
Good
he in
friend.
California?
He's in Munich. And he stayed in Munich after, I believe he's retired from BMW, but he still works.
Wow.
He actually worked on the interior of that Mullen concept car from last year's LA Auto Show, I believe.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's still very much active. Yeah. He divides his time between Munich and Italy a bit now.
Okay. I definitely.
But yeah,
speak to him.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's brilliant. Ian Cameron as well, who was our director at the time. Good friend.
Wow.
He's in Munich as well, but he also spends time here in California twice a year.
Okay, so well, I'm going to be hounding you to put me in touch with these people, Marek.
Will do.
And so you won the theme, and you were doing your full size back in California, and that was basically it. Then did you then have to go back over to Munich?
Yes. Well, so there was another development there. So I was at the time applying for U.S. citizenship.
Okay.
And for that, I needed to remain in U.S. for at least 183 days a year, which basically meant, I needed to be half the time at least. So I was working on a production car, so I couldn't, just be 6 months there and 6 months here. So we made an arrangement where I would go back and forth, month here, month there, month here, month there. And I did that for 4.5 years.
Jesus.
Which was challenging, to say the least.
I can imagine.
It was worth it. It was worth it, but it was pretty hard. It was, I was jet lagged all the time. It was a bit rough on life and social life and all of that stuff.
Any relationships at the time?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was engaged at the time, but that broke off. But
okay.
But no, it's for the best.
Okay.
Best, yeah.
Everything worked.
We're still friends.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And how long that process it went on for 4.5 years. The production
It
process.
did. It did. Yes, and it culminated with another amazing opportunity. Like I have been so fortunate, so lucky, so blessed with this. That I'm not sure how much you know about what transpired in the time when Bentley and Rolls-Royce were being sold, because one obviously went to Volkswagen, the other one
Yes.
went to BMW.
Yeah.
But without getting into too much details there, the arrangement was made that once the two brands would split up, that would happen on um, the January 1st of 2004. So, which meant that I guess I will have to explain a little bit of it. So, when Vickers sold Bentley to Volkswagen, they did not own the rights to the Rolls-Royce brand. Those rights were owned by Rolls-Royce Aerospace, with whom BMW had a long-lasting relationship. So when Volkswagen acquired Bentley and Crew at the time, with the whole deal, they were at the time obviously still producing Rolls-Royce cars in Crew. So the Seraph and the Corniche. And so BMW made a deal that they would not publicly market or even show the new car until for 4 years during the development of it, so that Volkswagen could continue with the manufacturing and the sales of the Rolls-Royce cars, so that there's no interruption in the history of the brand and so on. So there was continuity basically,
Right.
until that one cutoff date. So as part of that agreement, like I said, we couldn't publicly market the car, but we were allowed to show the car privately to the dealer's body, because we were at that time signing up new dealers, and also to the potential customers. And those customers were either brought by the dealers or by the PR agencies that would seek them out. So an amazing opportunity there, where these one-on-one presentations with potential customers. And these scenarios were called closed room presentations. They were in various locations around the world. And I had this amazing opportunity. Ian, my boss, the director, was doing these presentations in Munich and in London. Tim Leverton, our chief engineer, was doing them in Middle East. And I was doing them in US, in both Florida and in California, in Hong Kong and in Tokyo. And the experience was incredible, just incredible. What we would do is we would have customers come in for the presentation to this kind of completely incognito place. Nobody from outside would know what's going on inside. They would see a maquette, an architectural model of the Goodwood factory that was under construction at the time. Then we would usher them into a kind of a presentation room with a big screen, and there we would share with them a slideshow presentation, which basically showed the story of design and development of the car. And then from there, we would take them to a reveal room, which was beautifully choreographed. We would walk in basically to a pretty dark place with just one candle burning at the side of the wall. We would take them to the best vantage point, which was by the candle, and then the music would start, and a beautiful reveal sequence involving, starting with some gentle lighting, first on the Spirit of Ecstasy, and then on the wheels, and so on. And the car was behind a column of veil. And as the music built up, it was on a turntable. With the crescendo of it, the veil would come up, the lights would come on, and they would take the couple of minutes to take in the car from a distance, and then we would lead them to explain the rest of the design up close and the inside. So it was a prototype basically. So have them sit in, explain the beautiful seating arrangements that we've had, and all of this. And it was, Sam, I tell you, for a designer to have an opportunity to show a car to a customer, and show it to their virgin eyes. They've not seen the car. They've not seen a picture of it in a magazine. They've not seen the car on the street anywhere or on the internet, anything. To see the car for the first time, and for a designer to see the reaction, to see how they look, what do they see? Not through an intermediary, not a focus group, not secondhand information. That was priceless. Obviously, that went both ways, because it was fun for them to be,
of course,
shown the
yeah.
So it was an incredible experience. Incredible. I've learned so much about, customers, about how they see cars. Do they read? Do they see the messages that you're writing with the car? So really, really great opportunity.
For those presentations, what would you be doing to prepare for something like that? Because presumably there was somebody else involved with all the choreography and drama that made those events as special as what they were.
Well, we did work with generally small outfits, not big agencies, but there was in US, there's a company called Come Together that was the one that found the location, did all the furnishing of the space, worked with us on the reveal sequence and all of that. So there were people from outside, and the same thing in Hong Kong. We worked with the local PR agency that kind of arranged that. That was at the, what was it called? It was south of the island. It was at the forgot the name. It was owned by Peninsula, but it was not at a Peninsula hotel. It was on the south side of the island. There were residences, and it was a structure that was built ground up, actually, temporarily. It was like a pop-up Rolls-Royce room. That was brilliant.
Pop-up before pop-up was a thing, huh?
Exactly. Yes. Right.
Wow. That sounds. I mean, you describe it so beautifully as well, Marek. It's that was really cool. Did you have any training is probably not the right word, but let's use the word training at all in Designworks or at Rolls-Royce, for example, with regard to presenting to high-end clients, or were you already just naturally cool enough to do that?
I don't know about being cool about it, but I think actually I'll take that back to Art Center, because I would assume it's the same in every school, but basically the drill at Art Center is that every week you present, and you present to your peers, and you present to the faculty, but you also present to guest visitors, often sponsor projects. There could be chief designers. They could be sometimes the C-suite of the companies coming in. So I think that the practice of presentation, of course, helps a lot, because designers, on average they're more introverted, right? They're not really, they believe in speaking through their work rather than their words, right? But obviously in our world, that's only half the game. Like, you have to be able to articulate, what you're doing. But part of it, I think, is because I really do believe that design is communication. And I like to say actually that, the common phrase that, a picture tells 1,000 words.
Yeah.
But that's 2D, right? But an object, especially something like a car, three-dimensional,
Yeah.
tells 100,000 words.
Right.
And the difference there is basically between what, 1,000 words, that's your average essay, right? 100,000 words, that's a novel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You sit down to design a car, you're about to write a novel,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the story has to hold, right? And it has to be done with meaning, with purpose, with reasons, Um, and I mean, I used to joke that I used to present the car actually as a story from beginning to the end, from the front to the rear, and how it says a different thing in the front than it does in the rear, and so on. And that's where the tension in that design comes from, rather than tension that you used to in a car like a BMW, which is more about the actual tension in the profile and the wedge and all of those other things. But yes, so communication is a big part of it, and I think that if you do design with meaning, right, you just need to relate what you were thinking, what you were doing, to whoever is listening, if they're interested, of course. And I think that's what helps, And of course, if you're doing that with love, with passion, with something that's motivates you, right, it comes across as a lot more interesting. So.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think there's two things you've touched on there, and the one is obviously presentation and articulating your ideas and your thoughts and the background of a particular project, and the second thing, which is very much a part of that, is the importance and the art of storytelling. And
Yes.
this again was something that I that I just feel wasn't emphasized enough to me as a young student. And so it's great hearing about this stuff from you, and especially for some student that's listening to this, so it's just, these things are absolutely invaluable, the importance of storytelling. And I it wasn't until probably 5-6 years in to my professional working life that I've really realized this, because I'd seen such brilliant examples of it, not because somebody told me. And it's a recurring theme all the time when I speak to people like yourself. So yeah,
Yeah, to be fair, this whole notion of narrative and story is a bit of a recent development in world in general, right? There's a lot more attention being paid to the impact, the use, the importance of a story, right? And narrative. I mean, you hear that word,
yeah, it's been
almost a buzzword
overused.
these
Yeah, I know, totally. Yeah.
So I think that's probably why maybe, in the past you wouldn't have, been alerted to it's important as much and so on. But the key thing is that therein lies, I think, a great advantage of designers within a larger company or industry view. And designers are much more capable of telling a story, both visually, and if they can pair that up with, verbally or in written form, then there are some of the other disciplines involved, compared to, let's say, even marketing at times, right? And in fact, I was probably as involved as I was with the sales and marketing efforts in the company, because they recognize the value of having a designer speak about the design. in a way that makes sense or is interesting to customers. I actually ended up even working with dealers, in that capacity as well.
What kind of dealers?
So, I beg your pardon? Rolls-Royce dealers.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just bad joke. Sorry. Yeah. No, carry on.
I lost my train of thought.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right.
No,
It's all
no,
right.
you were talking about you were working with dealers.
Before that,
Marketing, realizing the value of a designer, telling a story.
Right.
No.
I can't remember now.
Oh fuck! I'm so sorry.
I think so. Yes.
No, okay.
Yes. No, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
I got it. It's like in a lot of my relationships with my clients, especially often with startups, especially, right, is kind of helping them build the role of a design department within the company, right? How to really empower it in a way so that the other departments see it as a place that they love to visit, right? Because it's a place of vision, right? And a place where they can kind of have a glimpse into the future, right? Not just by seeing a sketch or two, but something much more comprehensive, A creative environment is a place that needs to have a kind of a sense of energy and a buzz about it, right? It's an exciting place to go to, and designers, have the tools to have that, to make that for the rest of the company, And my big thing has always been like, throughout history, there are all these different disciplines that end up driving the industry, or kind of not dominate necessarily, but kind of lead, right? And if you look from the very start of it, it was the inventors that started the whole thing off, right? The Benzes and Daimlers and Henry, then later led to industrialists like Henry Ford and the Agnelli family and so on. So then it was engineers, right? Following World War II especially, there was all this technology that was all of a sudden making great advances at cars. And I think designers arguably either got that lead in the 60s, or were about to, right? Because engineering was already, still driving around. Maybe the Italians at least probably had that lead in the 60s. But then we had the fuel crisis, and who took over? The finance people, right? So the bean counters and all of that, right? Because then all of a sudden companies lost money. It was hard to sell cars, how to make money in the business and so on. In the 80s, I would say marketing gained the lead, right? It was the big days of marketing really taking charge and driving the industry. Following that, I suppose you would say product planning, right? Like look how many models car companies make. My former company like BMW will have variations of models that are they're hard for me to follow, leave alone to a customer to really understand what's a 3 GT versus a 3 this or 3 that or whatever.
Absolutely,
so and I think maybe we're now in a stage where it's these I think maybe we had a period between marketing and product planning. It was the CEOs, or the kind of the board of directors types, right? Like Dr. Reitzler and those guys. But I think now we might be at a stage where, the likes of Elon Musk and very wealthy billionaire types that kind of start companies to really take them into a new direction and so on, right? But I'm still working on, trying to get design to get back into that lead position, because I think that, designers have a talent that is required for them to do what they do, right? And without that talent, it's just impossible to do what designers do. But designers can learn other disciplines. They can inform themselves about business. They can inform themselves about marketing and sales and even engineering and so on, right? Whereas it's difficult for other fields to grasp design in the same way, right? Because of the need for that talent. So I think, with as long as they do it responsibly, right? There's a big distinction. Most people think that, designers, just because they have talent, what they do is easy for them, whereas nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Designing a beautiful car is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it gets harder actually with more and more regulations piling on top. So. And especially doing something original too, because with every year we've done more and we've done more, right? So
Yeah.
but the drive and the opportunity is still there, to take that kind of a responsible role forward.
You know what's
Leadership, really.
You know what's difficult in a kind of, especially in an OEM capacity. You're talking about designers informing themselves about other areas of the business, whether it be business or marketing or whatever, engineering, etc. And it's only at a certain level do you kind of get real autonomy to go and explore other areas of the business, or in certain circumstances, you can quite easily just be given menial tasks and to focus on this one little problem and lose perspective on the bigger picture completely. I think you've got to actively seek out these other areas and look at design from a 360 point of view, as in like it's one cog in the whole piece of the puzzle, and I think what you're talking about, I mean, again, it's absolutely phenomenal advice, and again, the other parts of the business you can often find yourself in a kind of them versus us scenario, and you just, you kind of, you demonize other areas of the business, like these guys are idiots, those guys are idiots, they don't know what they're talking about, and we are great here in design. But you can lose sight on what your role in the whole big machine is, when you just focusing on a body side, for example.
Yeah. The thing is, this is the challenge of design, right? Everything is important. And another way to talk about it is, like what you're saying, I think can be related to the question of being aware who you design for.
Right.
And the obviously the ultimate point is you're designing for the customer. But it's absolutely true that within, that's the longest distance that you're designing for, right?
Yeah.
But within that distance, let's be real, you're also, first of all, you're designing for yourself.
Yes.
Because you wouldn't be a designer if you didn't enjoy design. There's creativity, there's expression, there's personality, flair, all of those things. They're very important. If you want a good design, you have to have that, right? So you are designing for yourself to a degree. you are also very much, and I think this is dangerous. This is where most of car design lives right now. You're designing for your peers.
Right.
Car designers designing for car designers.
Yes.
It's a dangerous place to be.
Yes.
It's necessary, right? Because they provide checks and balances,
Yes.
right? Like, what are they going to think? What are your peers going to think about that design, right? They'll hold you accountable to what it needs to be, right? But you can't stay there, right? It has to go beyond that. The realities beyond that are, of course, you are designing for your boss, always, or a multitude of them, often. You are designing for the rest of the company, right? You are designing for, marketing is going to need things in order to make this a successful product. Engineering is going to need things for this to be a successful product, and so on, right? And it can't cost $1 million, you know what I mean? I'll never forget the first cost down meeting on the Phantom, where, we looked at it, and the word came back like, yeah, that door cost as much to make as an entire Volkswagen Lupo. So you can't do that, right? So things like that. So anyway, it's all those layers that you are designing for, right? But beyond that, it's the customer. Mm-hmm. And the reality is you have to design for all of them.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the car won't get through,
Yes. Hence why I think, that opportunity to present what you've worked on directly to a customer for the first time must have been such a special experience, because you never ultimately get that. That's such a unique situation to be in.
And I advise as many of my clients as I can, get your designers right in front of your customers. It's a win-win both ways. It's think about it, today especially, showing that you care goes such a long way in anything, right?
Yeah.
So if you can engage your customers in a way that they feel like, they have a say, that they can, contribute something from their perspective and so on. And if you have, designers who, actually do. The funny thing is, designers are always seeking inspiration, right? They're always seeking an idea, freshness, something new, right? And so much of that lies in a conversation with somebody who's actually using the product or the vehicle or whatever it is, right? And if you can just get past some of the language that's used, they may not say it in a way that sounds like an idea, but they'll say it in a way that if you carefully decipher what they're saying, you'll see an opportunity, and it's invaluable. That's where freshness comes from, Of course, if it relates to a context, it does advance, all the aesthetic norms and all of that sort of thing. That's part of it. That's what's so exciting about car design, is that you can never know it all. You can never do it all, but the challenge is always out there, and you're always trying to, live up to it.
Marek, can you tell me a little bit about your business now? I know you've on your website it states that you basically left Rolls-Royce, I think 2005, and you've basically been working for yourself ever since. I'm sure you've worked on a whole range of different projects, especially as your company Land, Sea and Air. Is that what refers to?
Yeah. No, actually, that's just the URL. No, you're good. You're good. That's just the URL, because with name like Marek DJORDJEVIC, I thought that I wouldn't have much luck in people being able to spell my name and get to the right place.
Right. Okay.
So that's why the URL is more of a descriptor, of what the company does. But the company is my name, Marek DJORDJEVIC Incorporated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you guys? What are you basically doing?
So I divide my services in kind of two categories, right? But the services themselves are brand development, design, concept development, and design development, right? But those are available to my clients either on a advisory consulting basis or actual project deliverables. And depending on a client, I'll do both. I'll do all of it, some of it. It depends. Most of it is automotive, but I have done projects that, either different type of transportation or some lifestyle products or task environments, things like that.
Oh wow.
But it's heavily automotive, yeah. And it's international, of course. A lot of it is in Asia, but it's I've done projects for brands in Europe and in US as well as in Korea, Japan, China, of course, a lot in China. It's amazing. I mean, I believe this is true now that Shanghai is now a city with most car designers in the world.
Wow. I mean, I'm not. It
there's
doesn't surprise me, but it's quite possible. Yeah, that's
yeah,
absolutely mental. Because I
yeah.
don't know why, but I somehow imagined that you were working primarily on boats. Now I thought you were done with
Oh
cars.
no.
Oh, okay.
Oh gosh, no.
Is there so are you I guess you working for a whole range of clients? I mean, is it mainly big OEMs or is it a mixture?
It's a mixture, yeah, all the way from complete startups to industrial conglomerates. So, and I think that's another thing as a designer. This is something that I've loved both at Art Center. The variety of majors, right, different disciplines, and the inspiration you can draw from that. That kind of, we used to call it lateral thinking. It's kind of basically recognizing a thought process in a field that's different from yours but similar, and then applying that in yours. So much about design is about the way you see things, right? And I can go back to that at some point. I've in recent years I've realized how different we see person to person. But I can go back to that in a minute. The similar thing was at BMW Designworks, because there were different departments within the building, right? There was the car studio, but there was also a product design studio. There was a transportation design studio that did things that are not cars, so they did buses and trucks
Trains.
and farm equipment, and boats, planes, that kind of thing, and a branding studio. So again, with an excellent CMF studio as well. So I've learned a lot from that, from my friend there, Alexander McGill, Sandy. And then, so I've always kind of thrived on, being exposed to and working with different disciplines and so on. Because again, it really kind of allowed a different perspective, a different look at things, or pay attention to things that you normally wouldn't necessarily pay attention to just within the car world. So that's why I enjoy. It's difficult, I have to say. It's not an easy route, but I love the variety in projects and clients and cultures, and type of products. It's always like starting from zero, but it keeps you sharp, and it's exciting. It's always a discovery. It's always an adventure journey.
Was there no temptation to go on to be some big fancy design director at an OEM somewhere else after the Phantom project?
Certainly was. And I've
Not
considered
not that you're not. I'm not saying that you're not that person now, but you know what I mean, like a Mr. Jaguar or Mr. Bentley or whatever the case is.
Actually, to be honest, part of the reason why I left was because I was not enjoying being identified as Mr. Rolls-Royce.
Right.
it's there. I mean, I love the brand. I loved working for the brand, but after a while of getting introduced to, friends or friends of friends as like, oh, this is, Mr. Rolls-Royce. And I'm like, yeah, no. I think identifying too much with a role like that is to me limiting or it's somewhat dehumanizing too.
Yeah.
And I obviously I love and I respect a lot of my friends in the industry that have those roles, but I can see how those roles can be very, boxing you in. Like you're constantly the mouthpiece for the brand and for the company and all of that, and that's okay. But after a while, there is you seek a more genuine engagement in a sense that, like, look, I'll be frank, go to an auto show, right? We're not going to go to many of them anymore probably, but this was escalating even before COVID. But you go to a press conference and they're just so disingenuous, Everybody's doing great. They all have fantastic vision for the brilliant strategy going forward, and nothing could be better in the world, right?
Yes.
And it's just this, one after another, and I don't know if I'll say dishonest, but at least disingenuous to a point.
It's like
right?
bad Hollywood. It's like really bad Hollywood.
Right. It's like watching commercials all day long.
Yeah.
It's just so. Yeah, there's that. But there's also freedom. I have the freedom and flexibility. I love traveling. And again, I love the variety. Part of the reason why I stayed as long as I did with BMW is because of the variety. Because, by the time I got tired of drawing kidneys, they bought another brand and, off to sketch MGs and Land Rovers. And, even we were even doing some Bentley projects before that whole thing happened. So the variety is definitely something that I thrive on, so that's really good fun. And I do enjoy teaching. It's one of those things. It's a hard to describe joy when you're mentoring someone, or when you see someone has talent and you see opportunity for that talent to grow and the abilities to increase and the result to be better, right? Or if you're trying to get them to understand a certain concept that has to do with, how things work or in process of design and so on, and you see that's, glimmer in the eye when they get it, they reach a new level. And it's priceless, really. That stuff is really great.
Do you have any tools to bring that out in people? And if so, what are they? Because I've heard there's some people, there are some lecturers or college professors and teachers in general that I think from all disciplines that think that they're doing what you're talking about now by being very negative to that person, and even can be condescending and they think it's like, they put it down to tough love, but it obviously can have a very adverse effect. And I get the impression that you're not talking about that. You're talking about something a lot more positive. What is that?
Well, a couple of things there. I think that, look, I am not, I am definitely, an instructor that will place high demand on the students, right? I mean, a lot is expected, and there's no question there, right? So the tasks are difficult. Tough love is there from that perspective, but that's there because I believe in them. I believe they can accomplish that. that they are challenged with, given the encouragement. Guidance and encouragement to achieve more, because it's always, it's like in anything, right? That's like whether you're training Navy SEALs or training for the Olympics or whatever it is, it's always pushing to the next level, right? Is getting to understand where the limits are and then trying to push beyond that, right? But doing it with care, not with, because, you know, I get off on being an asshole or something like that, but doing it because you see the potential and you want that potential to result, to manifest, to happen, you know? So that's one thing. The other is, I think that, you know, the negative, the thing is, I try to get, this is why it's important to do the critiques, right? And to do the critiques, not just students presenting and, you know, professors critiquing, but also to engage the peers, students, right? The classmates to engage in critique as well. And you'll very quickly see the difference between just a tap on the shoulder because they don't want to bad crit themselves, right? Oh, this is all great, right? Which, frankly, they don't learn anything from, right? But they also don't learn anything from personal degradation, right? Nor do they learn anything if you're just giving them the negative, right? You have to objectively as possible point out what is there that could be better and why. Because there are so many people that just say like, I mean, nothing worse than a comment, oh, that's ugly. Well, why? What do you mean? How can it be better? That's where you learn from, right? And also to divorce the critique of the work as opposed to the person. So it's important to, you know, always discuss the work, not the person.
Okay.
Unless, of course, there are issues that, you know, it has to do with some behavioral problems or whatever it is, right? But that's another story. That's more as they get, that's another thing that I challenge them with. You know, usually they get challenged with doing their best work ever, right? But as they get towards that, you know, 8th semester, the graduation point, you know, I you know, bring their mind to the fact that they also need to practice being the best person they can be ever, right? Because when the companies come in to hire them, you know, they're not there to buy their sketches. They're not there to buy their models. They're there to hire a human being. Yeah, that's going to work with other human beings, you know? So it's important that how you conduct yourself, how you come across, is somebody that's, you know, desirable to work with, and not somebody you're gonna just kind of leave in a corner, you know.
Marek, with regard to critiques, I have to say that I've taken issue with student on student critiques in the past. Like I'm obviously not now, but like when I was a student, because I'm like I see the value in it, but I also had an issue at the time with somebody else, in my view, that wasn't necessarily producing great work, coming along and highlighting faults or issues with mine, with whatever it is that I'm working on. And I think it's fine if there's kind of a tutor or somebody like yourself, a professional, moderating that and kind of making the whole experience a positive one, because maybe you can elaborate on that, or you could challenge that, and it's and then there's something positive about that. But there's nothing worse. I mean, in a critique is one thing, but there was nothing worse, particularly in the clay studio. You know, when you're working on your final year model, and everyone's got an opinion, yeah. And the people with the biggest, the guys with the biggest opinions are the guys that are not looking after their own work hard enough. And you still get that in professional studios, and that's why I just got so allergic. I got so allergic to that, you know. I hate it.
That's absolutely there. But think of it this way: it's practice. It's practice on two ends, right? One, if I am there, then I'm definitely moderating, right? And then I'm pointing out, what comment is helpful, what comment is not, and why, right? But what's really, really helpful there is that they need to practice or grow in gaining the skill of critique, right? And they need to learn how to constructively critique the work, not the person, not in a way that's offensive to the person, right? But it's also important for the other side to take the critique, to learn to take the critique. Unfortunately, way too often in the real world, they will be getting that kind of critique from somebody they might not respect.
Yes.
Whose work they might not admire.
Yes.
And that person is often their boss. And
yes.
so you better be exposed to that earlier on and learn how to deal with that, then have to, suffer the consequences when it's too late.
Okay, here's another thing on the same thing, but like another level. There's something that you've got in your head that you want to work out. You've got like this vision for, I don't know, a particular body side, for example, or a new package, whatever the case is. And it's like you want to execute your vision. And then, but then you are kind of like forced to sit down in a critique or a review, and you've got to listen to everybody's feedback. But it might be that what you're presenting at that stage is a work in progress, and now you have to kind of acknowledge everyone's feedback without. And maybe at times defending whatever decisions you've made up until that point or where you intend to go without taking things personally. But it's a fine line that you've got to dance between staying focused on your vision and coming across as defensive and like, I don't want to listen to anybody because I'm a spoiled brat or whatever the case is, like right. It's somebody coming along and telling you what's wrong with whatever it is that you're doing before you've even had a chance to finish it. And I was reminded of this very recently. I did an online video course with a YouTuber, and he he's obviously not in the course because he's a celebrity, but the course structure is like a series of videos that are released on a daily basis, and you assign tasks and you go ahead and you do your thing, and you are supposed to present your incremental ideas to the rest of your peer group. Quite frankly, I wasn't really a big fan of the rest of the peer group, and I found it counterintuitive or counterproductive to show them my work in progress. I found what I ended up doing was finishing my film and then putting it out to everybody and saying, please have a look, tell me what you think, I'm open to everything. But as somebody that it's these like, you're building a house and you've only got the walls up and somebody says you're missing a windows, and it's like, I know because I haven't had a chance to finish. You know what I mean?
I completely understand. Yes, and I'm of the same temperament. I do not like showing work that's in progress to people. Unless there are some opportunities, there's some situations where if I have the luxury of being able to provide context, okay. So if you have an opportunity to provide context for what's being viewed in a correct manner, and if you have the ability to manage the expectations, because a lot of it often has to do with just wrong expectations. right? Your audience may come in and have expectations that are completely disconnected with what they're viewing. Okay. So if you have an ability to do that, great. If you don't, you end up in a situation like what you're saying.
Okay.
But having so I'm with you, and there's that adage. I don't know if it's in English or back my language or whatever it is, but it has to do with like never look at the artwork that's not finished, like a piece of art, like what an artist does. Obviously, we're not artists; we're something else. But that relates to what we're doing. If it's not finished, if it's not ready for critique. But a context can simply say like, here's what's been accomplished, here's what still needs to get accomplished. If you can provide useful feedback within the context of what I've just laid out, please do so. But be aware that this is the goal where we need to be at this time, not now. So that helps. The other thing is a personal thing. Like, look, we're all go through that. It's just inevitable at a certain point. Like, you can't control everything. You can't correct for everything. You can't anticipate everything, all of those things. So that's why every designer obviously needs a certain amount of confidence. And this is the rub, because you need that right amount, right? That's confidence, not arrogance. But also balanced with humility, but not defensiveness.
Right.
Right? So confidence that you know what you're doing, you have the skills, you have the ability, you have a vision, you are doing it, right? And you know what needs to be done and you know what needs to be achieved, and it will be done right. But you have the confidence, your confidence allows you to listen to whatever feedback somebody might have without taking it personally and without resorting to, a defensive, posture. But look, we're all human. I've been in situations that, I know all of that and it'll still get me, right? But that's why,
Yes.
it helps to. But on the other hand, also, the humility thing is important, because you don't want to come across as somebody that just doesn't want to hear, because the more you come across like that, the more they're going to tell you.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're going to go out of their way to antagonize you. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think humility basically means, like, connects to another motto, if you will, that I have. You stop learning, you stop living, right? So there's always something to learn, and you can learn something from anyone, even if you don't respect them. You can learn from them. Okay. Because ultimately it's like, what could I have done better that, I would have avoided that comment or that, phrase, or what can I do next time that, I can do. But I think, again, managing expectations and providing context can help a lot of that.
Yes. Managing expectations is it's really that's a skill set in itself as well. Because I have to say, like, me personally, if my attempt at managing expectations, most of the time prior to whatever it is that I would like to show somebody, it just, I don't know, it can come off as like excuses, I'm not painting a very good positive portrait of myself, but again, it's it's the art of good communication,
Right.
which is it's a skill set in itself, absolutely.
And I mean, look, huge part of it is, again, people skills too, right?
Yes.
And building, the relationship doesn't start when you have that encounter, right? The relationship needs to start as early as possible, right? To build a good rapport with people and all of that. And that's, it goes a long way. We're also, look, it takes so much to do well and succeed, not just in designing a car, but being a good car designer, right?
Yes.
It takes talent, right? But and obviously it takes some degree of intelligence in navigating all of that. It takes tremendous amount of hard work. It takes certain personality traits as well.
Yeah.
And even the personality trait of conscientiousness has something to do with it, right? Because if you don't have that sense of conscientiousness, you're not going to be productive.
Yes.
Right. But then you also need openness, right, for that creativity. So that openness needs to be kind of both ways, both in terms of open to gain new experiences, new skills, new knowledge that will, propel you forward and higher, but also openness to, people.
Yeah.
So, we've all seen, there's another funny correlation to like Hollywood or all of that, that I like to talk about, because sometimes we've all seen designers or, people in whatever industry, right, that end up succeeding in it without a great deal of talent or even a great deal of work, right? Just because they're very amicable and they make, good friends along the way, and they know how to, progress in that regard.
Yeah.
I have a funny, right? We all know of people, right?
Yes.
No question.
Yes.
So it's a funny correlation to me with actors, like Hollywood actors, right? Or whatever actors, right? So let's say like the best actors, right, can take on any role, any genre, any type of movie, and man, they will live it, right? Like, method actors or whatever, they'll, like, if it's somebody that's obese, they'll gain weight. If somebody who's homeless, they go live on the street for a while, all of that stuff, really get into it.
Yes.
That, like, Dustin Hoffman, for example, right? He'll be in a movie playing a woman, to playing somebody who's mentally challenged, to being a gangster boss, anything. Throw anything at the guy, he'll do an amazing job.
Nail
right?
it. Yes.
Next one down will be somebody who's like really good at a particular genre of movies, right? Maybe it's comedy or it's action or it's, whatever it is. But you put them in another one, it just doesn't fit, right? They can't quite do it, right?
Yes.
Another one down would be they're a really good character actor. Like they play a great pissed off dad, or they're a good villain, or they play a really great cop,
Yeah.
But they don't really, you put them in another role again, not really,
Yes.
Then you have below that is the ones that are really good at just playing themselves, right? They have natural charisma, they're good looking, they have that screen presence, and you just go to see them. It doesn't matter what movie they're in, they'll just be them, right? And of course, at the very least, is like they have no talent. They really shouldn't be in a movie at all, right? But they're, related to the director or slept with a producer or, whatever it is. They're kind of in there. And it's so funny. You get the exact same correlation in our industry, right?
Yes, yeah.
You get the ones that, can go anywhere, right? And they'll do whatever brand, whatever car, they'll do a terrific job, right? Then you get the ones that great at doing SUVs, but boy, can't give them a sedan, right? They look stiff and all of that, right? Or they just, they just keep doing that sports car, or they keep doing, I know guys who've just done one car over and over and over and over again, just thinking like one day it'll stick, And then the ones that, that was a chairman of another company and they're in the studio now. So there you go.
There's a few of those as well. Marek, you've successfully achieved something that many people fail at, and that is having your own consultancy as a designer. What have you done differently to the many others that have not succeeded in that area? Because it's not an easy thing to get right. I mean, you are perpetually providing a service, and it's a lot easier to exist in the framework of an OEM role, for example, especially high up, because you get paid pretty well. what would you attribute your success to?
Well, I mean, look, I do whatever I can to do it right, right? But I would be utterly dishonest if I didn't say that. Look, I've also been very blessed, very lucky. It's a bit of that, faith that, if you work hard, if you do your best at whatever you're doing, just focus on doing your best at whatever you're doing, it eventually pays off. I have another interesting correlation to that is I've had plenty of opportunities where I did the work, even in a sense, like I worked way too hard for what either I was getting compensated for, or like it didn't seem like it was a big deal. But I went above and beyond because I saw what could be done and I did it all that I could do. Right?
Yeah.
And it was years later that I would get the fruit of it.
Right.
I know it sounds a bit abstract, but
No,
I can't tell you how many times I come across that,
But
So, it's...
No, you carry on. Sorry.
And then other than that, I would say I was... I took a risk, of course. It was timing. A lot of it was obviously timing, right? I was at a time where I thought I was at a peak of my exposure in the industry. If I was going to do something on my own, that was the right time to do it, right? I got my citizenship. That was another big plus. I've always wanted to try my own thing, right? And I wanted to do more diverse stuff. That was another part of it. Obviously, my experience, particularly with Rolls-Royce stuff, where I, was talking to a lot of people in different departments, I got a much bigger picture than most designers have a chance to in a regular OEM, right? I would be sitting in meetings with, Karl-Heinz Kalpfeld, God rest his soul in peace, who was the chairman of the brand of the company, talking about the vision of what should we do next, what's the line of cars that we should be doing, and all that kind of stuff. The car designers don't get that chance, all too seldom. So it was experiences like that that gave me the courage also to do it. But it's one of those things like, so many things in life are just, you think it's one thing that you're getting into and that you're doing, and then you realize it's something completely different, right? But eventually if you stick through it, somehow it all works out. And it does. And I've had some kind of personal experiences also that I've not personal experiences. I've observed some experiences of other designers that have started their design consultancies and had different, problems or issues. Like one had a situation where there was a business manager involved who ended up taking over the business. So I had to kind of watch out for that,
Wow.
It's hard to find people you can trust in doing an endeavor like that. So ultimately, I ended up, sticking to doing the model that I am doing, which was also in a way kind of ahead of its curve, in a sense that I saw that if you started a studio that had a physical location, brick and mortar type of place, the projects you will do would, you would have to go get the projects to keep the, overhead, sustain the overhead, But with doing minimal overhead, I was able to be a lot more light on my feet as far as which projects I take and not, right? Also, I don't have any permanent employees. I always build a team, and this is also very difficult, but it has its benefits. I build teams based on the project. So also because of my long-term of, being exposed to all the talent that does come from Art Center, I know who out there that's now in the professional world is talented at what type of thing, what type of project would be good for this person versus that person and so on. So that helps a lot, a lot.
Right. Right.
Um, and then of course with this COVID, it's been a disaster, but it's also been an enabler for a business like mine because I've had projects, let's say even in the fall of 2020, where I would have 5 or 6 designers on two different continents in 3 different countries working on the same project, right?
Wow.
Which even 5 years ago wasn't really that easy to pull off.
No.
Yeah.
So keep things streamlined. Basically, it's one of the key
It's
things.
worked for me. Yeah, I don't know if it's like a formula for anyone, but it's certainly worked in my case, in my scenario. And it's also been, literally almost all but one project have I got through just personal recommendation. Either I've worked with people themselves or somebody has recommended me.
Okay.
Like not one project that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go try to get this project from this company. Kind of, it's not panned out ever.
Yeah.
It's always the other way around, and I'm really thankful that that's the case because that's
Well,
obviously
that's always a lot easier and a lot nicer than having to go and sell yourself essentially. Because I mean, I can't think of anything worse. I mean, I really, really can't. So that's great. Did you have you done any like business courses or are there any books that like business books that changed your vision for how you wanted to do things, or did that just kind of happen intuitively?
I did very little that was deliberate like that. I did take an accounting course at UCLA when I started my business, just to kind of have some basics of the financial side of things. And then there was a book that helped me kind of understand some of my struggles or some of my thought process in kind of, or some of my dealings with the business itself, right? And it's a silly name. I don't know if I'll remember it right now, but it's something. Oh gosh, what was it called? I remember the unimportant part of the name, which was revisited. Something revisited, like not E. Anyway, the gist of the book had to do with the fact that different types of people get into an entrepreneurial context, right? They either come as technicians who are good at their craft and they think they can do better than whatever environment they're in, the studio or the company or whatever that kind of thing is. There's an entrepreneur that just kind of has this drive to create companies and all that kind of stuff. And there was a manager who, on the basis of their managerial skills, think they can have a go at that, right? So it helped me understand where I was in that landscape, and to kind of understand that if you come from one, you really do need to learn about the other things.
Yes,
So for
yes,
example,
yes.
I came from the technical side, right, with some managerial context too, right, but not so much of an entrepreneurial one, right? So I had to learn more about managerial. I had to learn a lot about entrepreneurial, right? What it takes, what's the big picture, what to focus on, what not to sweat, because as a technician, you are that guy that's, really worried about executing that task, right? But as an entrepreneur, you're looking at a much bigger picture,
Yeah, yeah,
much bigger
absolutely.
relationships,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah. So that was, another thing that I loved about it is that I knew that would learn a lot more if I went on my own. If I have stayed, maybe I would have, gotten my boss's job in 5 or 10 years or whatever. But I saw that I learned a tremendous amount in the time of, the design development and subsequent, sales experience with Phantom and the other Rolls-Royce cars, especially the 100EX, which was another phenomenal experience. Oh my gosh, that car and the people doing that car with, that was incredible, just incredible.
Wow.
And then seeing that car at places like Villa d'Este and as a centerpiece. I've been so fortunate. It's incredible, really. Conscious of that very much. But I think I lost my train of thought again.
Talking about different the different type, the ability to zoom out and zoom in, like look at the details and manage the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's very important. Yes, that kind of a tactical to strategic shift. Oh, the other thing is people often ask me what do you like better? Do you like better working for yourself, having your own business, or working at a car company? And look, I didn't leave because I didn't like working there. In fact, it was very difficult for me to leave, because at the time when I did leave, I had a terrific relationship with my boss, who's a dear friend to this day, Ian Cameron, Charles Coldham, who I just mentioned, fantastic studio engineer, or two of them, just a team that was brilliant, just brilliant. And it was hard, because I've spent enough time in the industry to know that people matter just about the most in where you work, right? And make all the difference.
Absolutely.
So working with the people that you are friends with and admire, that's gold, So that was the difficult part, but I did, want to try my hand, and later I will say that, when you work for yourself, you work more, actually, even more. Although I worked a lot when I was at a company, you literally work all the time, but it feels less like work.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
If you can understand that.
Yeah. I think because it's almost less. I mean, it's obvious that you're doing it for yourself ultimately, but it feels less transactional. It's like
Right.
you constantly doing these little things that you are that that you're gonna reap later on, or it's towards a bigger task, rather than like, I need to do this to show my boss tomorrow, or to show X and Y and Z tomorrow. Yes, I get that. I know what you mean. Cool. Marek, I guess we probably should wrap this up now. It's been going for 2 hours, and it's
yes,
and it was great, but it's been great, and it's flown by. Let's end off with my cliche question of any advice for young people wanting to become car designers in the 2022.
Well, it's the last bit of that question that makes it more difficult, right? Because the industry is at such a transition point. So many things are changing in the world and in the industry, in the car business, in design itself. But there are many reasons why I'm in a way envious of my students, because they have new tools now that are allowing them for expression and ability to create more, faster, and better than ever before. And I hope that they'll have a chance to embrace them. I'm speaking specifically, actually, about things like Blender's been an amazing tool for so many designers to accomplish so much. I've also been doing a lot with my students using Gravity Sketch.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the ability to do things like literally sketch in 3D, in quote full size. It's an amazing tool for both creativity, designing, but also to do a kind of a quick verification of an idea, right? Being a sketch model of a design that you've already created.
Yeah.
It's great for presentation. It's great for collaboration. I teach this class that I've designed from scratch, actually, a few years ago, called Experimental Process and Creative Form. And it's a class that tackles a lot of different things, but primarily has to do with the fact that, we're all recognizing that there's so much growing similarity. There's a sort of assimilation in style and design in the world, not just what you see in schools, but in the industry too, right? On the car shows, you'll see a car with the same form language that's another different brand next to it, and so on. And I attribute those partially because of the tools themselves, right? When we transition from clay to alias, for one, all of a sudden you can do surfaces that you could never do in clay. You couldn't do a thin floating, layer in clay before, and that became exciting. It's like, oh, I want to try that.
Right.
Next factor is, of course, that fashion or style has gone global, right? Because of the internet and all of that stuff. So you'll see, a hipster in LA dressed the same as the one in Berlin, as the one in, Seoul, right?
Yes.
And then lastly, very, very importantly, and I have this is one of my pet peeves. Every design project starts exactly the same way. Right. Pinterest.
Right.
And think, if your inspiration is the same, of course the end result will be similar. Right? So the big effort in the class is paid to generating your own inspiration.
Okay.
Right? In stimulating, originality, creativity, individual flair, and all of that. So I definitely would advise students to do that, to seek their own inspiration, their own flair, their own originality. But I would couple that with, it's like the age-old advice, right? Is like, you have to work hard. This is you don't get places in that field without a tremendous amount of hard work.
Yeah.
Foster your talent, pay attention to beauty, the importance of beauty in life and in this business is absolutely, paramount. Life is not worth living without it. So cultivate taste for beauty. Lastly, what would I say? I think it's an amazing world of opportunity for creative person out there. Always will be. So just apply yourself as hard as you can in developing that talent, and the rest will sort itself out. Be a good person too. That helps.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Marek, thank you so incredibly much. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You're a fascinating person. You've got it. You know what? I don't know what it is. You've got a very similar, cadence almost in your speaking to Anders in a way. When you describe things, it's like, I don't know what it is. It's like, I don't know if it was a Designworks thing that you got that you guys picked up, but it's like always just the right amount of information to explain something, which is like but just the rhythm and it's very, very interesting, and it's it makes it for compelling discussion. So yeah, thank you. It was
Well, it's been fun for me, Sam. Thanks for doing this. I think I really, like I mentioned in the email, I really do appreciate the premise with which you're doing this. You know, to inspire to inspire young designers and to help them to, you know, this is precisely the component. I just had I'm helping with the department for the development of the curriculum going forward, and this is precisely the kind of thing that I think is still lacking in design schools too, is for the students to get all the more internships, of course, help this, right? But to get a deeper, kind of a longer time segment insight into what it's like, you know, in this industry, in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. I
So
mean,
kudos for that.
thank you. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you. It was something that was honestly missing for me, and I conversations like this is it's educational for me, and it's absolute gold for a student, you know, and it was something that was definitely missing. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sam, it's been a pleasure.